And Councilwoman Blackwell, the chair of the Education Committee, has been appointed by the President to be on the committee today. On the resolution before us today.
Bill number 170954, an ordinance providing for the submission to the qualified electors of the City of Philadelphia of an amendment to the educational supplement to the Philadelphia Home Rule Charter relating to the selection of members of the Board of Education as approved by resolution of the City Council, fixing the date of a special election for such purpose, prescribing the form of ballot question to be voted on, and authorizing the appropriate officers to publish notice and to make arrangements for the special election. Resolution 170967, resolution proposing an amendment to the educational supplement to the Philadelphia Home Rule Charter relating to the selection of the members of the Board of Education and providing for the submission of the amendment to the electors of Philadelphia.
Thank you. Please, Ms. Lusser, identify yourself for the record and proceed, please. Good morning.
Good morning. This is working. Okay. Good morning, Chairman Greenlee, Vice Chairman Queen, and members of the Law and Government Committee.
And pull your mic. I don't know if it's the mic or could you pull a little closer?
Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Okay, I'll speak right into it.
Okay, there you go.
Sorry about that. My name is Jane Slusser, Chief of Staff to Mayor Jim Kenney, and I'm joined here today by Otis Hackney, our Chief Education Officer. I'm pleased to be here today to provide testimony in support of Bill number 170954 and Resolution number 170967, which proposes an amendment to the educational supplement to the Home Rule Charter, allowing for council's advice and consent to the mayor's appointees to the Board of Education. In his address to council on November 2nd, Mayor Kenney outlined his goal to return school governance of the school district of Philadelphia to a locally appointed Board of Education. The mayor described his strong belief that 4 key factors must be present in order for the school district to be successful: adequate resources, strong management, collaboration with the city, and direct accountability. We need local control to continue the district's progress on each of these factors. Taking success to the next level means better academic results for students and a more equitable and vibrant Philadelphia. With a Board of Education appointed by the mayor and approved by City Council, the governing body of the school district will be directly responsible and accountable to the elected officials who chose them and ultimately to the voters. The expected timeline for a return to local control takes us to March of 2018. As you are aware, the School Reform Commission's recommendation to dissolve is subject to the approval of the Secretary of Education, who has until December 31st, 2017 to certify their decision and allow the SRC to dissolve at the end of the school year, or June 30th, 2018. In early January 2018, the mayor plans to appoint the Educational Nominating Panel as outlined in the Educational Supplement. This body will then have 40 days to submit to the mayor a list of 27 individuals, 3 for every available appointment, from which the mayor will then select 9 for appointment to the board. It is expected that this process will be completed by early to mid-March of 2018. This will allow for a thorough and smooth transition process during which all of the new Board of Education members will have ample time to prepare for their important new roles. While this process will be before the final adoption of this amendment by the voters in the May primary election, it is nonetheless important that these individuals go through the public process prescribed by the amendment. For that reason, the mayor plans to submit the appointments to council for your advice and consent on these initial appointments, as well as any future appointments after the effective date of this amendment. That concludes my testimony, and I'm happy to answer any questions you have.
Thank you, Ms. Slusser. Mr. Hackney, you going to say, or are you just here for questions? Okay.
Moral support.
Yeah, right. Moral support, right. All right.
After you, sir.
Okay. No, that's okay. Chair recognizes Councilman Jones, and then I know Councilman Reynolds Brand has a little time limit, so we're going to go to her.
First of all, good morning.
Morning.
Second of all, there are members here that have far greater in-depth understanding and knowledge about the public education process here, and I rely on their opinions about a great many things. Having said that, I do have a couple of questions. So we agree on a lot of things, both the council and the mayor's administration. So I'm going to go right to some of the things that we may differ on, and give me your best arguments as to why we should consider them. So there is one about the time of confirmation. And if I could paraphrase, that there needs to be a date certain that from the time you submit those names, that there is a action by this council to either confirm or not confirm. Otherwise, they will be deemed confirmed. Tell us why you have that opinion.
So for us, this is about sort of future appointments, not the first round of appointments. Basically, I think it's because with the school district governance is too important for us to make appointments and then not have people in place and ready to govern the school board. So we want to make sure that if we send names up and there's no action taken, for 6 months, that we are able to get those people in. So we want to have a clear timeline so that we don't have a school board without any members or without enough members to actually take action.
So let's assume we're not going to take 6 months.
Yeah.
I think that's a safe bet. What would be a reasonable time, considering that you're going to make these appointments by the end of the fiscal year?
We will be making appointments in March with the idea that the school, the Board of Education will need to take some time to have a full transition to get up to speed on their new roles. So we'll make those appointments in March, send those up to council, but their effective date won't be until July of 2018. So they'll have about, a 5-month period of ramping up.
So in my mind, ramping up, that date certain is when young people in the city of Philadelphia go back to school.
Yeah.
Now, you guys need a little more time to get ready for them to open the door. So somewhere in between those times is either a fail-safe date that you want or a commitment from us to say that we will meet to confirm and have made those decisions. Is that a fair statement?
Yeah.
All right, that's number one. Number two, where are you guys at on, and a big issue I got jumped in the hallway was register to vote, and people being Philadelphia citizens. Where are you generally on that?
So one of the issues with that is that our department, and I can call Dan or Jim Engler up here to talk about the legal aspects of this, but that our appointments to the board are still subject to the school code, to the state school code, which requires that appointees be a citizen of the Commonwealth. And so that means that we feel that we don't have an option to take a different interpretation of that because it's laid out through the state school code.
My concern, I appreciate that.
Yeah.
My concern is the influence of someone who is not a Philadelphian, meaning no matter what your nationality, where you came from, to have that influence of business on our kids' education.
Yeah, so they will also all be residents of Philadelphia, and that's laid out clearly. So we would not be looking for appointments to either the nominating panel or the Board of Education who are not residents of the city of Philadelphia.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Okay, thank you, Councilman. Was one thing I wanted to ask Ms. Slusser, I forgot. The nominating panel, there's been a lot of people who have asked, how do you go about getting on that, applying? Have you set any kind of criteria yet, or if not, how soon? Because people are anxious.
Yes, so there are some pretty clear criteria laid out in the current charter, which indicate that that there should be 9 people on that, which are representative of various types of organizations. So for instance, one of those is a Chamber of Commerce type organization, and a number of other different types of community and neighborhood organizations that are laid out for the 9 folks there. And then there's 4 folks on the nominating panel that can be sort of anybody without having to fill those specific qualifications. In order for anybody to reach out, it would be similar to any other board appointment that falls under the mayor and the executive branch, which would be just sending in something to the mayor's office or to anybody on our staff with a recommendation or inquiry. When we move forward to the Board of Education, where there are not those specific type of organizational criteria, and where obviously those folks will be serving for a longer term, There will be a lot of public outreach so that people can put forth their names a bit more easily, but the
Okay.
nominating panel, because it has those distinct criteria for so many folks, is a little less easy to invite everybody because it is so prescribed in the charter.
No, but what would you see as the time frame? Say that,
Those should probably come into us before the end of the year so that we're able to process them and have the nominating panel appointed in early 2018.
and you're going to get that information out?
Yeah.
So people will know?
Yeah.
Okay, thank you. I'm going to go to Councilwoman Reynolds Brown, because I know she has a little time issue
Thank
here.
you, Mr.
Councilwoman?
Chairman. This morning I come to speak in my role as Vice Chair of the City Council Committee on Education, and so I need to first say thank you to Chairman Greenlee and the members of the Law and Government Committee for the opportunity to speak on this important and, quite frankly, historic legislation regarding the future of our school district. With the end of the School Reform Commission, we find ourselves at a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity to get this process right. Over the fall, my staff and I have met with several groups to hear and learn recommendations on how best to set up the school board so to ensure maximum accountability to the students and parents that the district serves. One of the ideas that has repeated itself has been the importance of having parent participation, representation, and/or a parent advocate on the board. As is the custom in our office, we've done the research on best practices around the country. We learned that reserving a seat for a parent on a school board is now one of the best practices. 6 states and the District of Columbia have passed legislation to require parent representation on their school boards. Those states include Connecticut, Delaware, Hawaii, New Hampshire, Tennessee, and Virginia. What are the reasons why having a parent seat makes sense? First, a parent seat ensures that at least one person on the school board has an intimate relationship with the current workings of the school district through the experience of their own child. You simply cannot replace firsthand experience. Second, when you reserve a seat for a parent, other parents, students, elected officials, and the media will look to that person to advocate for parents while they're serving in that capacity. An elevated platform for a parent to raise both parent and student concerns can be a game changer. My staff and I are convinced by the research and the logic on this and actually considered drafting legislation to require a parent seat on the 9-member board. And conferring with my colleagues and speaking with my staff and a number of others, we have the faith that the mayor and the nominating committee that will be selected by the mayor and conferred by members of council will understand how important parent advocacy is for a high-functioning, accountable board. With the proposed charter change now authoring city council oversight, know that we will be paying particular attention to the ability of nominated members to represent all of the interests of both the students and the parents, and I join my colleagues in looking forward to the mayor's selections. So thank you for the dialogue back and forth with my office and the administration and a number of my colleagues, and we want to underscore how important it is, the gravity of having some type of parent representation in that major decision-making body. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Councilwoman. You have any comment on that?
Well, so just eligibility for the board membership is currently laid out, has really 3 qualifications laid out. The first is being the parent of a current or a former public school student. The second is having training or experience in the areas of business, finance, education, public housing, or community affairs. And the third is any other such training or expertise relative to the beneficial operations of the school system. So we agree with you completely that having parents on the board is incredibly important to us. And when we send up those names for council approval, hopefully there will not just be one, but more than one parent represented on that board.
Great. Thank you. Thank you. Councilman Green?
Thank you, Chairman Greenlee. Thank you, Councilwoman Reynolds Brown, for your commentary regarding parent involvement. As a parent of a child in the school district, I think that level of involvement is very important. Ms. Lusser, I wanted to talk with you and Mr. Hackney in reference to the issue of transparency. You talked earlier about the process of names coming to the educational nominating panel. But my question is regarding the transparency of how they're going to do their work when they come up and provide the list of names of the 27 individuals to the mayor. Will there be any type of public meeting, public discussions, or ability for the public to know how they're going to deliberate and receive that information?
Yeah, so we're still working through some of the rules of procedure to be laid out for the nominating panel, which we would ultimately also discuss with the chair of the panel, who will really be responsible for that. I think that it's incredibly important with an issue of this importance, that people do not have any questions about how decisions are made and what the process is. So I expect at the time that we lay out who is on the nominating panel, that we will also make clear what that process looks like, what types of opportunities for public input or public meetings there would be, so that people are well aware of that, and can follow it and hold a panel accountable throughout the process.
And as the panel, and as you come up with the policies, I'm assuming there'll be interviews and other type of deliberation activities and how you evaluate people who are interested in serving on the school board. But I think it's very important that we provide as much transparency as possible in this process, so we allow the public to see how this group that is going to be the educational nominating panel goes through their process of identifying the names that will be submitted to the mayor, so that way the public has full transparency and all the information they need regarding that information, so that way we have an open process, so people have better comfort regarding the people who are going to be leading our school district going forward from a board perspective, especially for parents like myself, to make sure we have an understanding of what's going on and how these individuals were selected.
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Councilman. Councilwoman Blackwell?
Thank you very much. We've been asked to request if the members of the new board, and I'd like to request if you have any information about the nominating panel too, because there are a lot of people who are interested across the board and who may want to be on that as well. And I've been asked to request information with regard to whether or not current board members can be among the 9 on the new board.
So current SRC members are not precluded from a future appointment to the new Board of Education. The main issue is that current SRC board members cannot seek another public office while currently being an SRC member because of the requirements of the SRC. So they would not be able to seek that office until the end of their tenure. That would not preclude the nominating panel from considering them for appointment or from them being appointed after July 1st or the date of their resignation from the SRC.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Councilman. Councilwoman? If there are no other questions right now, if I could ask that you, at least 1 or 2 of you, stay around, because there might be questions that come up during the hearing.
Yep,
We
definitely.
appreciate that.
Yep, no
Thank
problem.
you all very much.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Ms. Marconi, our next speaker?
We have Hillary Leonardopoulos for Jerry Jordan of the PFT.
And while she is coming up, first, just let the record reflect Councilman O, a member of the committee, is present. And while she's coming up, if I could just tell everybody, we have a fairly extensive list of people who want to speak. So to be fair to everybody, so that people aren't sitting here for hours, we're asking everybody to limit their testimony to about 3 to 5 minutes, with emphasis on 3, okay? So we can try to move along. If you have written testimony, and a lot of people have given in written testimony, you don't have to sit there and read the testimony. That will be made part of the record. If you could summarize your statements and then be available for questions, just so we can move the process along, because sometimes we have people that just can't wait 2-3 hours to speak. So we want to be fair to everybody. With that, please, identify yourself and proceed.
Duly noted, Councilman. My name is Hillary Leonardopoulos. I am on staff at the Philadelphia...
A little closer to Mike. A little closer. I don't know what's with that mic.
I'm on staff at the Philadelphia Federation of Teachers, speaking this morning on behalf of PFT President Jerry Jordan. And I will not read the full testimony,
Okay,
but
thank you.
PFT supports the home rule charter change that gives the city council a greater role in approving members of a school board. Over the years, members of City Council have stood beside Philadelphia's educators, parents, and students in calling for an end to state control of our schools. So it's only right that the body play a significant role in determining the next school board. So as the process moves forward, I simply wanted to outline a 4-point platform that we have developed at the PFT for qualifications for the new school board members. First, we believe that school board members should be committed to advocating for neighborhood public schools as the center of community. And this is something that Mayor Kenny and members of City Council have really fought for, to recognize that community schools and neighborhood public schools should be the center of community, and every child should have access to an excellent neighborhood public school. And that means fully funding them. 2, the school board members should reflect the diversity of our great city, and that should be a diversity that is racial diversity, ethnic diversity, cultural diversity. 3rd, we believe that school board members should demonstrate a deep understanding of the issues that affect public school children and staff, and that should be encompassing the voice of educators and parents, because they are the ones that live the public education experience every day and know the nuances and understand the significance of the various components of funding and what types of pedagogy should be unfolding in the classroom. Parents and educators are really experts on that. And finally, and most critically, school board members should actively pursue fair and equitable funding for our schools. It is perhaps a misconception that because we are moving back to local control, that Harrisburg is now off the hook. That could not be further from the truth. There are 499 other school districts that have local control that Harrisburg is required to fund. And in fact, the state constitution has a thorough and efficient clause, which is being litigated now in the courts, but the state constitution does have a thorough and efficient clause which requires that we adequately fund our schools, and that is not going away, and is something that school board members should really, truly be committed to fighting for and pursuing. So we've submitted copies of our testimony. We've also submitted our platform, and we really thank you for your ongoing interest in what's going on in our neighborhood public schools and your ongoing commitment to fighting for kids and families, because that is our path forward as a city. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. I'm glad you mentioned that last point about Harrisburg is still responsible, as we were talking up here, and I just hope the legislators understand that too. We need the board members obviously to be advocates, but we hope the legislators understand that they still have a responsibility.
Absolutely.
And I know we have our delegation up there pushing, but we need other cooperation too, so hopefully
that is very true.
We'll be able to operate more smoothly than we have been in the past. Councilman Jones, and then Councilman O.
I'll yield to Councilman O.
I'm sorry.
I yield to the vice chair.
All right. Okay.
He's not here.
He's not here, so.
Oh, is that right? Okay. Well, thank you very much, Councilman Jones and Chair. Good morning. Thank you for
Good morning,
sharing
Councilman.
your testimony.
Absolutely.
What is your position, or the PFD's position, on having a number of the school board members having a minimum level of education and experience in, well, education? For example, I do have an amendment. I don't think it's going anywhere, I'll say that openly, but I do have an amendment to this resolution that of the 9 appointed members, at least 1 appointed member shall hold or have held a full-time position of leadership in an institution of higher learning, and at least 2 appointed members shall have an advanced degree in education and at least 10 years of experience in the education profession.
It's definitely something that is interesting, and we have not considered that. Certainly, I'd have to take a closer look at it and talk to our executive board members and the rest of my colleagues at the PFT. We have not taken a position on it. Our strongest points are the ones that we outlined today, and we really believe that advocates for public schools and experts from public schools can come from, not having a formal education to having a doctorate. They run the gamut. So we do not have a position on that amendment at this moment, but I'm certainly willing to look over it and talk to Jerry and the team at the PFT.
Thank you very much.
Absolutely.
I know it is a very democratic idea that everybody's equal in this country. I just don't find that to be proven by best practices or anything. I just see that while you can have all kinds of people on your school board, you really do need education professionals. And I'm very concerned when boards consist of people who don't know more than the superintendent and his administration. They are not clear on what the administration of the school is, the management of the school is, the standards of educational theories and things like that. I happen to respect people who have spent a good portion of their time studying education, getting advanced degrees, and being committed to the profession. That's my position, and so I appreciate your position. The next thing is that I have, as you know, introduced a bill to withdraw from the parking authority the functions of on-street parking. And at this time, we just passed a resolution urging the governor, the mayor, and the General Assembly to return to the city of Philadelphia the control and the revenues of the parking authority, which I think is very needed to fund our schools. What is the PFT's position on that?
It's a good question. I certainly appreciate your dedication to finding recurring revenue for our schools because it is absolutely critical. Regarding the parking authority, that's a hot button issue, isn't it?
I'm sure it is. To somebody, not to me.
We have
It's not a hot button issue at all.
So I'm going to give you the same answer I gave you to the last one, which is we have not taken a position on it. I believe that there are, that there's a lot of nuance there in the parking authority. I don't know enough about the legislation that you have introduced to say, to give you our initial thoughts on it today. It's something that I will definitely talk to with Jerry, talk to with our executive board, and we will, we're of course open to looking into it more. Absolutely.
Please.
Yep.
I very much would love your answer. I'm happy to say that both the governor and the auditor general have come out publicly to say control of the parking authority should be returned to the citizens of Philadelphia. As you know, they took over our parking authority when they took over the school district.
Right.
And their basic claim is that the money was needed to fund our schools. At the time, they said $45 million per year.
Right.
Up to, but in court, they testified the schools would get $45 million per year, and we have not gotten that, or we would have gotten $720 million from the parking authority to date. We have come nowhere near that. So I certainly would love to have the PFT's opinion on taking back control and revenues of the parking authority, especially in light of the address by the mayor.
Sure.
That looks like we're going to increase taxes in this city, which I think would be very difficult on a lot of our senior citizens, people on a fixed income, homeowners who've inherited their homes and cannot afford these tax increases. So the parking authority, to me, rightfully belongs with the city, is unconstitutionally taken over, and we've already lost a lot of revenues, and we're not getting funded to the degree from the state that we would have if we simply had the parking authority with us in addition to whatever funds they've given us. Thank you very much.
Yeah, absolutely. And just to add to that, I think that it is really important to be looking for state sources of revenue, and like I said, we will definitely study the parking authority issue and governance more, but I do want to also just add that one form of revenue that's absolutely absurd that we do not have right now is an actual tax on the Marcellus Shale. So we're the only industry, or we're the only state that has a major drilling industry that does not have a tax on the Marcellus Shale. That is something that should be easy to do, but unfortunately, politics happen and it has not, unfolded. So I think that there are, I definitely appreciate the interest that you have in the parking authority, returning it to local control. I think that we should be fighting for a shale tax.
I appreciate your interest in the shale tax. I hope you'll come up with something locally here with the parking authority.
Sure.
Thank you.
Thank you, Councilman. Councilman Jones?
All right. Thank you, first of all, for reminding us that there are over 300 school boards that are independent and locally controlled. And there is a mandated commitment from the Commonwealth prescribed in the Constitution that says they have to fund public education. So I've been listening to a lot of this. Again, I give deference to people who have spent their professional careers dealing with public education. But one thing I need to hear a little more of is the end product about these young people.
Yep.
I do not care who is controlling what if we are not controlling the output and increased efficiency in educational product of our babies. Because it's just who is going to get the spoils as opposed to how that local control at the end of the day is going to mean a graduate has better outcomes upon education completion and graduation. That they're going to be more employable people so that we stop worrying about qualified workforce, which has been an issue for us, and that we don't continue the pipeline from school to prison.
Yep.
So that we don't have young people that go through education processes only qualified to work at fast food. We have to take a deeper dive on the side of how this translates into a better education.
Absolutely.
And I'm going to need to hear more of that from folk, not just worried about who controls the resources. And I do appreciate how we get the money.
Absolutely.
I care about how we derive a predictable funding source for them. But at the end of the day, what I need to hear about is that graduation rates will increase. I want to hear about that the outcomes post-graduation are better.
Yep.
I want to hear about young people actually staying in the area more often than they do now. And those are the things that I care about. Who, what,
Sure.
all of that stuff is fine. But if we're not talking about that, then we're not talking about much. So
Councilman,
that's where I'm at.
so in the last month or so, I've had an experience with one of my former students who I taught him when he was in kindergarten, Elijah, and he's now 17, and he's in significant trouble with the law. And I read about him in the newspaper from a column by Helen Ubiñas in the Daily News, and recognized that Elijah was now in significant trouble. He's been in family court, and he did not get the help that he needed when he was 5 and in my class, and when I asked and begged and advocated for Elijah. It would have been much, much easier to get Elijah the help that he needed when he was 5. He is 17 now and has now just been placed in a location that's 7 hours away from his family. His mom is fighting for him like you wouldn't believe. And we as a society have failed Elijah. So the work that we do, the work that I do every day is for Elijah. It's for all of the Elijahs that we're fighting for every single day. We are now going to be dealing with the aftermath of not helping Elijah when he was 5 for the rest of his life. And when we talk about experts and when we talk about practitioners, we need people who have been educating Elijahs, who have been in Elijah's life doing this work. This is why we do it. When Elijah came in with the prison guards in his family court hearing and turned around, saw my face, the smile on that child's face was the same smile that he had when he was 5. He mouthed to me, "I remember you." And he got up at the end of the hearing after it was a very, gruff, and it was this and it was that and it was boom, boom, boom. You wait 4 hours, you have a hearing for 9 minutes. He turns around and he just smiled at me. He said, "Bye, Miss L." And these are the kids that we're fighting for. So when we're talking about a school board, we're talking about a commitment as a city to fighting for Elijah. Because right now, we have colossally failed Elijah. If we had a community school where he was in school, if he could get the mental health care that I said he needed when he was 5, we wouldn't be in this position. So we have to invest in our kids on the front end. We have to trust the educators. We have to trust the parents. When Elijah's mom went away for a time, she continued to fight for him. As soon as she got back, she was right there in the school. She was right there at the parent-teacher conferences. And that's the work that we're doing. That's the work that his mom is trying to do for him to this day. That's the work that we all need to be doing. And so when we're talking about a local school board, we're talking about, I think, a broader issue of being locally committed to fighting for every single Elijah that is in our school system and moving that agenda forward. So when I think of the agenda, it's a kid-based agenda.
So I really needed to hear that. Let's multiply that by the 9,600 other Elijahs
Yep.
that have been up on State Road. We know that those 9,600, and it's been reduced since we've been involved, come from 11 of the 48 zip codes in the city of Philadelphia. 48 zip codes, 11 of them occupied 90% of those young people. And the irony for me is that those are some of the same zip codes we closed 23 schools.
Absolutely.
23
Absolutely.
schools. Schools closing, jails filling. And so all of this for me, where you get the money from, who controls the money. At the end of the day, when I'm sitting there, I'm gonna be looking for what is the incremental increase in positive outcomes for the Elijahs.
Absolutely.
So we together. I just needed to hear that more in this discussion this morning. Thank you, Mr.
Absolutely.
Chairman.
It's all about results, right? Yeah. Okay, thank you, Councilman. Councilman Green?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you for your testimony, your heartfelt testimony this morning, and giving us a real focus on this issue. Looking at your testimony and the bullet points, you talk about point number 4, that school board members should actively pursue fair and equitable funding for our schools. And you make reference to this activism is particularly significant at the state legislative side. One of the issues, and when you talk about Elijah and Councilman Jones talking about 23 schools being closed, those schools were closed due to a lack of resources. And I think in listening to the conversation today, we have to remember that under our state constitution, I believe it's Article 3, Section 14, it's the responsibility of the General Assembly to provide a fair and thorough system of education for the citizens of the Commonwealth of Philadelphia, of the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania. Sometimes people forget that Philadelphia is in the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania. So from that perspective, what type of steps do you think school board members should take in reference to advocating for additional funding?
I think it can definitely be challenging because you have the Philly delegation in Harrisburg that gets it, that sees it. I think that we have to have difficult conversations with legislators across the state. I think that we should be working towards building coalitions with other school boards. So I think that it would behoove a new school board to be working with other boards that have had funding challenges, to talk to members of those boards, see how they have advocated for their state legislatures. I think that we should look at certain legislators whose voting record shows that they do not have a significant commitment to funding education. Talk to those legislators, but also talk to the public school communities in those districts and see, okay, well, there is a serious disconnect here between what your legislator is voting on and what your school district needs. And I think that it's not going to be easy, but I think that when we say commitment, we mean more than saying, yep, we're for funding. It's going to be uncomfortable and difficult conversations.
And I agree, and I think it takes some commitment, and we're going to have some very hard challenges in reference to
Yep.
where people's real loyalties lie in reference to their interest in education and interest in the future of young people in the city. I think in the coming year, we're going to have some very challenging decisions this body is going to make. Unfortunately, based on past track record, I don't believe the General Assembly, the current leadership of the General Assembly really has that belief or thought regarding the citizens of the city of Philadelphia and the future of our Commonwealth and our city in reference to providing fair funding. And unfortunately, we're going to have to make some hard decisions. And I think it's incumbent upon us, for those who are really committed to education, to make those decisions and come up with real funding ideas and concepts based on real proposals and not suggested ideas that don't have real possibility of coming to fruition.
Definitely.
Thank you, Councilman. Before I recognize Councilman O, just quickly, Hillary, and I know in a sense, every area is competing against each other for funding and whatever, there's only so much funding. But how well do you work with other teachers' unions or associations around the state? I mean, is there,
Yeah, we definitely, we have good relationships with their leadership, and we talk to them frequently, particularly when issues like a shale tax come up, or when issues that, when the PFT, Philadelphia Federation of Teachers, we have just the teachers in the city of Philadelphia. Our parent organization, AFT-PA, has other locals. Primarily, the AFT represents cities, and the NEA represents, the counties. So we work significantly with other AFT-PA locals. So they are in Pittsburgh and Pottstown. There's a few other, and Scranton. And we do work with the PSEA leadership and try to, collaborate with them when we can, absolutely. Because that is very important, particularly in building those coalitions and moving some of those legislators towards fair and equitable funding.
yeah, because I'm thinking of, because obviously we're focusing on Philadelphia for obvious reasons, but I'm thinking there's got to be some of these cities like Reading and Altoona and places like that.
Absolutely.
They ain't getting treated too well either, I don't think,
Absolutely.
So,
The
that's why I
coalitions
said,
are going to be essential.
Okay, thank you. Councilman O?
Thank you very much, Chairman. I would like to ask you to consider point number 5. I do hear a lot about full and fair funding, and I agree 100%. However, I'm very concerned that in Philadelphia, there isn't full and fair funding distribution in our city. Some schools get a lot more, and some schools get a lot less, and that's always been the case in Philadelphia. I would love to see, as point 5, that we could make up the difference of funding shortages that has historically occurred in certain schools, and then level off to ensure that all schools have a fair level of funding throughout the city of Philadelphia. If I were to gander a guess right now, I would say if the average per student in Philadelphia is 12 or 14,000, that if I looked at different sections of the city based on schools, some school students are getting 18,000 and some schools per student are getting 8,000. It's not very fair in this city, and it really limits the opportunities to address exactly what Councilman Jones was talking about, that school-to-prison pipeline and those type of things. I will say that I do think that's why the leadership issue is important. I've heard from some people that leadership does not make that much of a difference, and I'm talking about some of the school folks. And I would say they're only looking at, elected versus appointed in general. They're not looking at the quality of those who serve, whether elected or appointed. It makes a difference who's in leadership. I think everybody would agree, whether one way or the other, that who's president of the United States has made a difference. And it makes a difference, who's the district attorney of Philadelphia. And I think equally it makes quite a bit of difference who is running our schools and what their vision is and how well they're able to achieve their goals. And with that, the best chance for improving outcomes is to ensure that all of these things can occur. So please consider a point number 5. Thank you.
Will do. Thank you, Councilman.
All right, thank you. The record will please reflect that first members of the committee, Councilwoman Gim, Councilman O'Neill, and Councilwoman Bass is here, and also Councilwoman Sanchez is present. If there's no other questions, Thank you, Hilly.
Thank you,
very
Councilman.
much.
Thank you. Thanks, everybody.
Give our best to Jerry, please.
Will do.
And
Thank you.
Ms. Marconi, we're going to call up in panels now, okay?
Anna Pern, Jude Hussein, and William Jackson.
Okay, I see two folks coming up. Ms. Pern, I guess that's you, right? And then we got Mr. Jackson, is that you?
Yes, sir.
Okay, why don't we bring one more person up here? I don't see Mr. Hussein. Elizabeth Moffett, is she here? Yes? Okay, why don't you come up so we can do part three, okay? And, Ms. Pern, we have your written testimony, so if you could summarize, we'd appreciate it so we can move through the panel. Please, identify yourself and proceed.
Sure thing. My name is Anna Pern. I'm a parent in
A
Philadelphia.
little closer microphone. I don't
Sure.
think that mic's working really well, but yeah.
So good morning. Thank you so much, City Council members, for the work that you do every day on behalf of families. My name is Anna Pern. I'm a parent of 2 disabled children. My son attends public school in Philadelphia. I also co-founded a support group for immigrant families with children with disabilities. You have my written testimony. I'll summarize it very quickly.
Thank
The
you.
work that you're doing is very important because up until 1972, it was legal. Pennsylvania legislators made it legal for public schools to deny an education to disabled students. That historic, that wrong was corrected by the grassroots, and it really came from families, from disabled people, from groups like Public Interest Law Center, and it paved the way for the right to education across the country. But I'm here to tell you that in 2017, we're very far away from those promises of an equal education for disabled children like mine. I've testified before this city council before the SRC. I've gone to Harrisburg to talk about problems such as disabled children having to go to schools in segregated classrooms 2 hours away from where they live, away from their siblings. I've testified about providers having caseloads of 60 kids, resulting in IEPs where kids get minutes of therapies that they need to learn to read and write and live an independent life and hold a job. Immigrant parents are expected to sign papers that they don't understand because we're not providing them with interpreters. And in the worst performing schools, there are kids in classrooms with disabilities, 30% in the worst performing schools. And these are students of color predominantly. So I do want to mention that we often hear that there's no money for special education. But I do want to point out that the SRC has annually approved the school district's request to invest in private law firms to fight families like mine. And I just want to say that if budgets are moral documents, what does it say about us as a society when instead of investing in special education, we're paying private lawyers whose kids don't even go to this school? What does it say about us when we're enriching people to fight our own disabled children in this city? Our school district has become an ATM for privatizers, big law firms, corporate interests. Our students should not be guinea pigs for researchers. And while I thank the SRC for its service, its existence has created a vacuum for accountability when it comes to our students' civil rights. I commend Mayor Kenny for being accountable for our public education and proposing a way forward. To some, this is a cynical game, a notch on a resume, or their political aspirations. But for children like mine and families across the city, a school board where people who lack campaign financing and political capital to run for office is our only chance of representation to fix our broken special education system. And after 16 years of sharing our stories and being ignored, families like mine do deserve to have a voice on the new school board. President Obama has often quoted Dr. King in stating, "The moral arc of the universe is long, but it bends towards justice." But he also adds, "It does not bend alone. We must bend it." If disabled people and their families can pave the way for the right to education, I believe we can fix our special education system too.
Okay, thank you. Thank you very much. We'll hear from all three before, if there's any questions. Ms. Jackson, I think your name was next, so why don't you go? Please
Good morning.
identify yourself and proceed.
Good morning. My name is William Jackson. I am a parent here in Philadelphia with kids that go to Mastery School. I do understand that the council wants me to be quick, but I cannot abbreviate my message because it represents thousands of families. So I'm just going to give it to you straight. I lived in the city of Philadelphia all my life. Got 5 kids who go to Mastery, Worcester, and the Pickett campuses. I voted for the mayor. I like him. I like his smile. I think he's a good guy. So when he lays out his vision in October that there would be a new school board and that school board wanted and needed high-quality schools in every neighborhood, no matter whether they're charter or district, I applaud it. I'm here this morning to remind the committee of the mayor's promise to make sure that all new school board represents the public schools. That means all of our kids, all of the students that attend public charter schools and all of the kids that attend district schools. These are all our kids. These are all public schools. There is no place in the school board, in this new school board, for people who are trying to tear down the district. It works for thousands of families, thousands of poor families. I'm here to tell everyone, Mastery is taking schools like Shoemaker and Pickett and Worcester, some of the most depressed and most violent schools in the city, and they're turning them into the halls of learning, platforms for discovery, and beacons of hope. Does anyone know how hard that is to create in the ghetto? Discovery and hope. Mastery sends our kids to college. Mastery graduates compete college at a college level 3 times national compared to their peers. That's 3 times the national average. Let me say that again. Mastery graduates complete college at 3 times the national average. 3 times the national average. That means these young men are not going to prison. They're going to school. They're going to work. They're doing different things in their community other than tearing it down. And behind every Mastery school, there's an army of parents. Parent leaders who are advocating for their neighborhoods. And we descended on City Hall last week. We met with 13 of our council members. We're still trying to catch up with the last 4. We'll catch you. We're pleasantly surprised to find that city council members see us and recognize us. We ask each council member to stand with us in efforts to get a fair renewal contract for our schools and to ensure a fair, competent school board. Every member we meet was committed to work and to ensure that the new school board represent all of our school students, charter and district alike. We intend to hold the mayor and city council to your word. A new school board that represents and respects and understands all of us. We understand that today's action is simply to put a resolution on the ballot to give the council the authority to approve the mayor's appointments. We are here this morning to make a statement. The Mastery parents are in this process. We're not going away. We're there for the long haul, and we are committed to ensure all children, not just charter, not just district, but all children have access to great education. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Moffitt, before you start, just to keep the process moving, Ms. Marconi's going to call 3 more names, so they'll be ready to come up. Okay, next.
Jay Krabby, Maurice Jenkins, and Kelly Jones.
Okay, if they're here, okay, if they could just walk up, maybe sit in these black seats up here, okay? I'm sorry, Ms. Moffitt, please identify yourself and proceed.
Okay. Good morning, members of the council.
A little closer. That mic is not very good.
I know. Thank you. Good morning, council members. My name is Elizabeth Moffitt, and I'd like to thank you for allowing me for the opportunity to speak this morning. There are many changes ahead for the school district that will dramatically impact Philadelphia students as early as the 2018-19 academic year. As this body considers changes that will affect how school board members are selected as a parent and grandparent who has struggled to educate children in Philadelphia, I applaud your efforts to make sure that board members are well vetted, and meet approval of council as well as the mayor. I'm also here asking that this body and those who ultimately make the final decision on board members be mindful that all public school choice options be represented. Over the years, I've spoken in Harrisburg before the SRC and also before this body regarding special education and quality education on behalf of my grandson, who is now a senior at Maastricht's Shoemaker campus. He, like many of his classmates, has struggled to succeed academically. One of the main reasons for this was the tangle of policies that existed in district schools that delayed changes that could quickly help these students make academic gains. Maastricht has successfully turned around many chronically failing schools, and the results for my grandson and other children are what bring me here today. I would like to share with you some of the incredibly positive results that Maastricht's Renaissance Charter turnarounds have had. These are particularly important to understand now if we are to truly fulfill the vision articulated by the mayor and many of you, that there be high-quality schools in every neighborhood for every child, no matter if they are district or charter schools. Then the continuation and expansion of neighborhood schools like Maastricht's and other charter schools is a critical part. We believe that this is a part of the solution that any new school board would need to embrace. And there was an attachment with my testimony, a chart that shows the progress of the schools, the turnaround schools that Maastricht has run. As you can see, there's been incredible growth in student achievement in every school. My grandson attended Mann Elementary prior to the turnaround and after, so I'm speaking from firsthand experience. You can see that at Mann, math and reading proficiency rates have more than doubled, with the school now above 80 percentile compared with other district schools serving similar grades. Other schools like Smedley and Frankfurt, the results are even more dramatic, with 7 times the number of students reaching proficiency, taking the school from the bottom 10% of schools to the top 75 in reading and 65% in math. So this is not just my story. This is a story for tens of thousands of families. Our neighborhood schools, these Maastricht turnarounds, are working for our kids. Over the years, many changes in the school district have been made with little input from the stakeholders most affected by these changes, namely our children and the parents who must choose what's best for them. And that's why we're here speaking now for fair representation for all school choices during all phases of this process, not after the process has been completed. Our children don't get do-overs. We must be as vigilant, assuring success of students already in school at all levels as we are in assuring success of those who will be entering kindergarten under the new school board. Thank you.
Councilman Green, I think, has a question or comment.
Thank you, Chairman Greenlee. I want to thank Ms. Pern, Mr. Jackson, Ms. Moffitt for your advocacy regarding these issues. I know, Ms. Pern, you've been an advocate regarding issues regarding autism, both at the local, state, and national level. And I want to ask some questions to both you, Ms. Pern, and to Mr. Jackson, Ms. Moffitt. With local control, what type of changes would you like to see in reference to the school district regarding disabilities and advocacy regarding autism and other type of services? And then for Mr. Jackson, Ms. Moffitt, what changes would you like to see regarding the charter school office?
Well, with looking at over 43% of the children going to school in Philadelphia going to charter schools, we would just like to see fairness in our upcoming contracts. There are a lot of oppressive terms in there that are going to destroy Maastricht Charter School. And I have a very personal story connected to Maastricht. My son, Amin Jackson, is a 16-year-old young man who had a lot of struggles in school. I've taken him everywhere from parochial school, private school, and to public school. But he only was able to thrive in charter school and in Maastricht. And believe me, that Maastricht Charter is so much different from other charter schools. But we would really like to see a fair contract. We would like to see what works for low-income African Americans here in Philadelphia. If it works for us, please let us keep it. We will fight to keep it. And that's what I would like to see. These mastery charter schools work for our kids and for our families, and I like to see them stay and not be bullied and pushed out of the education arena.
And I'd just like to, as you said, you're speaking about children with special needs. My grandson also is autistic. And so just to give you that comparison story, he started out in district schools. He was extremely underserved, extremely, to the point where by the time he was in 5th grade, my daughter and I were worrying about where would he go. We couldn't even really see high school for him. He's in like 5th grade. He's not able to read. He's not able to write, but he goes to school every day and he's making C's and B's. He's a great kid. He's got a great personality, but that's not why you promote children. You don't promote them just because they're great kids. You promote them because they're learning, and he was not. And ironically, when they were doing the turnaround, I actually joined the SAC because I'm like, oh, here comes this mastery school. It's all cleaned and polished, and we don't want that here, because he had already been rejected by several charter schools. And I know that part of it is because the more children you take with IEPs, the lower your scores are overall, so that your school, when it compares to other schools, doesn't stand as high. So you reduce the population of IEP children and your scores go up. But once I reviewed the charter and went to visit the schools, I quickly changed my mind. There was so many things that were offered to him that were not. In the district schools, when he had problems with his IEP, it would be, well, when the team comes in 3 months, we'll review, we'll figure out what we can do for him. And then 3 months would come, and then if that didn't work, I had to wait 3 to 6 more months for the team to come in. By comparison, once his IEP was done, when the school was turned around and his IEP was done by Mastery, first of all, it was one of the most comprehensive, and I had as a tutor for him a teacher who was a special ed teacher at the school he used to go to. And she reviewed it. She just couldn't believe the difference in the evaluation that he got. The IEP was implemented right then. Then he evidenced changes like in his behavior, in his learning pattern, and he was having a great deal of difficulty. The team then re-evaluated him, made adjustments to his IEP, and implemented them within the next few weeks. I didn't have to wait 3 or 4 months. I didn't have to wait for the next time the team came through. So all that time, when children, especially children with special needs, have to wait like that, that's time they don't get back. That's time they're not learning. All that to say that now he's a senior. He reads for pleasure, he writes, he's able to, he has had experiences that he would not have been able to have. He's been able to fence, he's done internships, he, has been able to participate in all the activities that the school offers, they offer to all of the children. So in answer to your question, what I'd like to see, whether it be district, charter, is that when these students are evaluated, that things are applied immediately, that the charter offices, if schools are doing well, let them stand. Let them continue to serve. If the schools are not doing well, then evaluate them and bring them to the same standard as the high-performing schools.
Thank you. Ms. Pern?
Thank you. Well, I did want to say, Councilman O expressed a lot of concerns about fiscal waste. In my testimony, allude to the fact that law firms are given essentially blank checks. Whatever the school district requests, the SRC approved, and it was without any scrutiny or review about what all that money was used for. And while in an ideal world, I would like to believe that they were providing, compliance training on civil rights legislation, my own experience and that of families across the city is that we were being battled every day, minute by minute, for whatever therapies our kids needed. And this the fact is Philadelphia County has less students with disabilities than in the 5 surrounding counties. That information is available, it's public data on Open Data Philly, and that information will show you. Then the rankings of student enrollment, disabled students don't have a chance at going to good quality schools where kids can eventually graduate and get jobs. You look at the school performance ratings and progress reports, and then you compare that to the enrollment of kids with disabilities, it's in the single digits, and that's illegal. The naturally occurring rate for students with disabilities in school should be 12%. So if you're a top public school and you have less than 12%, I have questions about where you're shipping your kids to. I'm tired of having our families fight so that our kids can go to our neighborhood schools. The fact is, no child should be separated from their siblings to get an education. It's been a very painful process for our families, and I think that there needs to be some trimming of the fat when it comes to private law firms. There are too many happy customers, there are too many cottage industries where these law firms are presenting at conferences about how to screw over families in court and paint us in the worst light. So my suggestion is we examine that law firm budget that gets approved every year, and we look at how to invest that in special education so that providers can actually start providing the services. And, as the PFT representative alluded to, teachers are empowered to get what they ask for their kids at the school building level. The way things are right now, you have to get approval from special ed directors in 440 who don't see those kids every day. And you have meetings where the people who know that child every single day, every single class period, are not empowered to ask for the resources. And that is what sets up an us versus them dynamic that is not productive, and it cheats our children out of the futures that they need. And the last thing I'll say is that the school-to-prison pipeline is real, but the one thing that needs to be recognized is that it's disabled students' schools-to-prison pipeline. A majority of women in prison are disabled. So I just ask that you consider that in a greater discussion about racial and economic justice, that you consider disability as well.
Thank you. Councilman Jones.
Chairman has made me commit to being brief because we have a long agenda. But first of all, I want to give a big attaboy, attagirl to Mastery's parents, because I've been in all of my schools, public, private, parochial. And one of the things, other than climate, other than grade attainment, I asked in an evaluation of how many parents get involved. Yeah, there's many parents involved in the school. That speaks volumes of the school. And then finally, I agree with you on disabilities. Something I don't really share is all my kids went to public school. My grandkids now go to public charter schools, of which I will not name because I don't want to do that. But one of my grandkids is special because she is on that spectrum of autism. I don't talk about that to the councilman because, quite frankly, she doesn't know, and nobody really treats her any differently. But she's been able to excel from where she was to where she is now, to be that kid that is not ostracized because of whatever disability. So I agree with you. At the end of the day, if you look at those same prisons, the tiers are full of people that did not get the appropriate help early enough to adjust, like my granddaughter hopefully will. So I get it.
Okay.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Councilman. Good point. And thank you all for your advocacy. Okay. Thank you for being here. I could ask the other two, and then Ms. Marconi, I think we have another person we missed earlier.
Jude Hussein.
If she wants to come up too. There we go. So please, whoever would like to start, please, right in the microphone, state your name for the record, and proceed, please.
Good morning, members of Law and Government Committee. My name is Maurice Jenkins. I'm a parent of a second grader at Grover Cleveland Elementary Master Charter School and an active member of the Parent Action Team. I'm here this morning to let the committee know how important it is to families that the new board reflects people in every community, and that the charter schools not be discriminated against. Just last year, Cleveland parents identified a need for crossing guards at major intersections near the schools, and we organized a change of an unwritten policy and discriminatory practices targeted specifically at schools and against our children. One such policy was police departments for years been denying charter schools requests for crossing guards. When we began our fight, we were told that charter schools were not public schools and they were not entitled to have our kids equally as safe as other kids that attend district and Catholic schools. We knew this practice was unfair, and Police Commissioner Ross acknowledged it and understood the importance of child safety. We met with Commissioner Ross, expressed our concerns, and built a relationship with him. And now we have 6 new crossing guards stationed at intersections throughout the city where our kids cross each day. I speak for more than 12,000 Mastery Charter School families who not only want their kids safe, but want policies and procedures to be fair. I live in North Philly. I don't have to look too far to see that in my community, things are not always fair. Many times promises are made, and sometimes they're broken. We don't want this to happen here. Mayor Kenny promised that the new school board will represent members of various communities and trust in the mayor to keep his promise to every student in every school, whether it be district or charter, and make sure that the new school board speaks for everyone. As you consider this resolution to the council, to give the council the authority to approve the mayor appointed for the new school board, be mindful of the tremendous responsibility that council undertaking to do the right thing for our kids across every part of the city. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for your statements. Who would like to, maybe the other Mastery's parent will go.
Good morning, members
Morning.
of the Law and Government Committee. My name is Kelly Jones. I am a parent of children who attend Mastery, Clymer, and Pickett campus. I am a lifelong resident of Philadelphia, currently living in North Philadelphia. My son Ramir is in his senior year at Pickett. We don't know which college he will attend, but he will be going to college. He talks about it every day. I share his excitement, but it's exhausting at times. He applied to LaSalle University, Bloomsburg University, Schittsburg University, and many other colleges. My daughter Nasaya is in the 3rd grade. She started Clymer and kindergarten and did not attend any other schools or daycares before attending school. For the first time was a bit of a challenge, but I like how the teachers at Mastery embrace her and help her transition as a student. She's a straight A student and loves going to school. I agree with the mayor in that every child deserves to have a great education and that all children, whether they attend public district or public charter schools, should be represented on this new school board. That is key to me, that every family throughout the city of Philadelphia is represented with decisions and made about our children and our children's education and their future. So that is why I'm here this morning, to make sure that we move through this transition for a new school board that the mayor promised and the promise of many council members with whom we have met is kept. I want my children to have the same opportunity as a child that attends a special admit school. I want my children to attend college and be one of the students the mayor said could come back and put back into the city with a job and opportunity. I know those things can happen because, as the mayor said, the buck stops here with him. But it also stops with me and other parent leaders and with you. No more finger pointing about charter versus district. It is important that this new board understands that more than 40% of all public school students in Philadelphia attend public charter school, and those students should be represented. As a Mastery parent leader, we simply want to be a part of every process regarding this transition that includes making sure our voices are heard as you consider the resolution in front of you today. Thank you.
Thank you. Please.
Good morning. My name is Jude Hussein, and I am a Philadelphia Youth Commissioner. As I am a product of the Philadelphia public school system, I am honored to share my testimony with all of you today. In order to serve a community, one must understand the people within. In order to make a change, you need the people to stand with you. In order to effect change, leaders must verify their constituents' voices are heard regarding what happens within their community. In order to ensure that our city thrives, we must first provide necessary resources to the youth of our city, as we are the future leaders. Having a board that does not represent the people that go through the public school system was the first mistake, but not a mistake that cannot be fixed. A mayoral-appointed school board will allow us, the youth, to look someone not only for direction, but to ultimately hold someone accountable with what happens when matters become uncertain. As a former student of the Philadelphia public school system, I have seen firsthand what happens when teachers are not well equipped to educate their students. I've seen what happens to teachers that have passion to teach their students, but spend days worried about making ends meet due to a lack of contract. With this mayoral-appointed board, the school district and city can come together to unite all resources. This then allows both entities to collaborate with programs that are already formed and establish bigger and greater projects that benefit us, the youth. Underneath this established charter, we find numerous pieces of information. I would like to highlight just a few. The charter is clear that if this does become a mayoral-appointed committee, there will be a nominated panel that includes 13 members that are educated about the Philadelphia public school system. This panel will understand the needs that the district has, as well as the potential to grow and evolve. This panel will include members from parent association representatives that have rallied for years to try and have a greater say on their children's education. Who better to understand a child's needs than their own parents? Furthermore, it is necessary that we have a youth representative present on the proposed panel, because there can be no decision about youth without the youth, ladies and gentlemen. We must stand side by side, because the mission is all the same around: growth. Growth within our public school system will be the only way we can grow as a community, the only way we can grow as a city. I stand here as a commissioner who advocates for a board that is representative of the constituents that they will service, but I do not solely stand here as a commissioner. I also stand here as a student who has personally experienced a textbook crumbling in my hands, understanding the struggle to receive an adequate and representative education necessary to help students like me succeed in all goals that we come upon in life. I stand before you to speak with you, not at you, to support the youth to grow, unite, and create a city flourishing with educated minds. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. We have no questions or comments. Thank you. Thank you for
Thank you.
your advocacy.
Yeah.
Ms. Marconi, who do we have next?
Julian Terrell, Cameron Cobia, and Kelly Jones.
Supposed to give the copies to? Yeah. I got you.
I see two people up here. Okay. Who'd you call? She was. So we'll call one more person. Huh? Yeah, put that in. Okay, why don't we start? Go ahead. Whoever would like to start first. Identify yourself and proceed.
What do
Go
I push this button? Oh, good. The mic is working. Good morning. My name is Julian Terrell. I'm the Executive Director of the Philadelphia Student Union. I've submitted testimony, so you have it to read. But I'm actually going to just talk briefly, more to the specific points that I was talking about in the testimony. I also would like to respond to some of the comments that were said earlier. I don't see some of the elected officials who are here to mention it. But I think when we're talking about a school board that needs to be representative of public schools, right, we've had people who've spoken before who I think have outlined the arguments very well, and thank you for your comments. But I also want to think about the moment that we're in, right? I think that's really the best way that I can use my time. Okay, we're all with me? I just want to make sure that folks are with me. I don't like talking when folks are not.
Well, we're trying to do a lot of things here, but we're
Okay.
listening. Please
Okay.
proceed. And there's people listening in their
Okay.
offices too, so
Okay.
please proceed.
I think we're in a moment now where for 16 years, not only has the SRC been in power, but we've had several students who've gone to schools that have closed. We have several students that have gone to schools that have been over-policed. We have several students who are walking around with school records that have suspensions that should not be on there, right? And what they've been told for more than a decade is that they can go to a body that meets once a month to be able to voice their concerns, right? So I want you to think about students who have aged out of the system, right, and are adults now, and are looking at their siblings who are looking at other students who have been told the same and have repeatedly been able to go to this group. So when we talk about the fact that the SRC was dismantled, I think that is a victory. But those of us, who organize, who do this work, and there's several advocates and organizers here, we understand that that was only the first step, right? I think we also have to be mindful of the precedent that we're sending right now to our students, that if we really want them to be invested in their education and there's going to be a shift around decision-making, that shift would not be made, should not be made without their involvement. The fact that we are having a hearing about the change to the charter at a time where students and parents cannot be here, I think is a bad precedent. So I want to start with putting that on record. I understand that you all are here during the day, but if we're talking about a school system, right, and I thank the parents and students who are here today because they felt that it was worth the sacrifice, but that is not a sacrifice that they should have had to make, right? So I wanted to start with that. The second thing that I wanted to start with, or that I wanted to continue with, is also when we're framing expertise, and Councilman O talked about it earlier, but when we talked about expertise, we talked about masters, right? We talked about education professionals. We don't talk about the students who literally spend the majority of their day within these schools. We didn't talk about the parents who wait for their children to get home wondering if they had a good day, wondering, right? But they can't be sure because they've been told stories again and again where their young people's input is not being brought into decision-making, right? We have a superintendent who is allowed, saying a lot of the issues I talked about to happen without any clear accountability. So if we really want to set a clear precedent moving forward, not only do we need to have, saying a clear and transparent process, but we also need to be mindful of who is on these boards and who are we actually claiming as experts. I would say that students are there. I would say that parents make the best advocates a child can have, right? I would also say that it is fair for all parents to be on there. So if we have language that restricts immigrant parents from being able to advocate for their kids at a time when ICE are inside schools, at a time when parents can't be sure that ICE are not going to follow their children as a way to get them, we need to take that seriously. Right? I understand that all of you, right, you know what I'm talking about, have been at these hearings that heard these issues. So when we're looking at being able to create a school board, we need to take a comprehensive approach to doing that. And not just putting education professionals on there who understand cost-benefit analysis, not just having education officials on there who understand programs that actually do not work, but let's talk to the people who are actually directly impacted by these systems and empower that. Right? So when we say that we want to change the resolution, I'd like to be able to make sure that the amendment is made so we can include parents with voting power. Having them on this board is not enough. Right? We need to make sure that we're bringing in immigrant parents to make sure that they have voting power. That is what empowerment is. Thank you.
Thank you. Whoever would like to go next, please.
Sure. Good morning. My name is Cameron Cobia. I am a junior at Central High School and a member of the Philadelphia Student Union. I am here to inform you of why students deserve more of a voice in the school board. Based on the current plan for the school board, the students only received advisory votes. Now that the SRC is dissolved, there is room for reform with consideration for the new board to thrive. I am speaking on behalf of students who ask you to seriously consider a school board consisting of parents, educators, community leaders, students, as well as undocumented students and parents who all have equal votes. We ask that you repeal the registered voter clause because with that still in order, students, the undocumented people, and people who've been caught in the justice system have certain convictions will continue to have limited access to many opportunities the school board will provide for those included or represented by it. The student voice should be the most important voice with the power because we are the ones experiencing what the school board implements, and without our input, the board will be missing crucial information, such as how the environment of the school affects us and whether or not our educational needs are met, the presence of school, police, and quality of teaching we are receiving. We can speak to recommendations on how each of these issues could be handled, but would not be able to vote on these recommendations without the change to the charter. Given what school a student goes to can be looked at when deciding the spot on the board. For example, I know that Central is a more academically recognized school that receives funding, and we also have alumni who support us financially. However, poor neighborhood schools need to receive more funding, and having someone on the board from one of these schools would help decide what assets are needed and provided. These schools are constantly overlooked when they have no way to improve without gaining better funding, and a strong school board is important to making these changes. Giving these students power on the school board will offer them opportunities to improve their school environment and the resources they have, therefore creating a better school board in which everyone is heard and everyone benefits. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilwoman Gim, I'm going to, because I think we got called a little bit out of order. Wait, hold on one second. Because Ms. Ponce, am I pronouncing that right? I don't think your name was called yet, so I want to be fair to everybody and call it in order. Okay, so just sit there, that's fine. Do you have a question?
I'll wait until the panel.
Okay, all right, well, I was going to ask these two to step aside and then have the next group. So if you wanted to say something, or you want to wait till the next group? Or?
No, I just wanted to, first of all, thank especially Mr. Terrell and Cameron for coming out, because I know how important it was for you to be here to testify. And I agree with you that it is not having your voice here has a lot of impact on how we're going to be framing the issue. I also wanted to express thanks for bringing such an intersectional approach to how we talk about what it means to have a diverse and representative school board, and really appreciate it. One of the questions that I had, just for clarity, is that, and I think Mr. Terrell, you spoke to it, but I wondered if you could just make it even more clear. So the school board does have a non-appointed member that is a student. Can you talk a little bit more about why you feel like that is inadequate? And Cameron, feel free to weigh in as well.
I think our stance is that when we talk about student voice, we don't want them just to be present. We want them to be able to have meaningful input, and meaningful input without a vote we don't feel is adequate. I think what happens now is oftentimes there's a lot of hearings, right, and we've all been to them, where new initiatives are talked about and students are invited to be in the room, and that's being said, or that's being told is what engaging students are. Right, or if a young person, our members, members from across the schools, across not just district, come and testify, that is what is being seen as student voice. But what happens is, and we've seen this with the SRC, our members and other students have offered recommendations based on their analysis, and that's not gone listened to. So we have this paradigm to where student voice is being held up, but without teeth within the charter to be able to represent that, I think the paradigm will continue where recommendations can be offered, but they don't have any authority to be able to put that. So if we're saying we're putting out a board, or I think if the charge is really to create a board, right, to be able to bring, our school district and school system into the next wave, I think that it's an opportunity to really change that specific contradiction. I mean, we also want to make sure, saying that our immigrant families are also represented, but I think when we're talking about the boards, the fact that you have a large group of a board that has voting power and the students who are on there do not, I see that and we see that as a primary contradiction that needs to be addressed.
Thank you.
Yes,
Thanks for all your support.
I think Mr. Julian really touched on everything, so.
Okay, if I could just add, if I could just put information, just as far as the student being on the board, there is in the Pennsylvania school code, which we have to abide by in the city of Philadelphia, it does specifically say, I know there's some other wording that could be open to interpretation. It does say to be a member of a school board, you must be 18 years of age or over. So you could still be a student, but you would have to be 18 years of age according to the state law, just for information.
So one last thing, just because I don't want to take up space from anybody else. I think that when you join a committee, you join with the opportunity to really push and to be bold in your decisions, right? And I understand that right now, decisions of schools is being moved to Philadelphia. So I think now is a very strategic time for this committee and the rest of the elected officials who represent this decision also to be able to move with a very powerful recommendation. I think that you all have the control to be able to change it in the charter, and we will continue to do the work because that's just what we do. But we also look to you all also to be able to take it to the state to be able to change that as well.
All right.
Because
But I'm just saying, as of now.
No, I understand it. I understand that, but I think
Just
that
still want to be clear.
this is what the work now is required. We need bold leadership, not just within the city council, but for you all to talk to your counterparts in the state to be able to change that. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you both. Ms. Marconi, before we hear from Ms. Ponce, why don't we call two more names so we keep a panel up here?
Kendra Brooks and Olivia Vasquez.
Are they both here? Okay, good. Okay. All right, Ms. Ponce, why don't you go first, okay, since you're up there.
Good
And we have
morning.
your written testimony.
You hear me?
Yes.
Good morning, everybody. My name is Olivia Ponce, and I'm here before City Council today as I'm a member of the immigrant rights organization Juntos, and as an immigrant mother of two. My daughter is a graduate of the Philadelphia Public School System, and my son is currently a freshman Central High School. I am here because I personally know the hurdles that many immigrant families in the city of Philadelphia face when it comes to their involvement in their children's education. This is why I am urging City Council to change the language of the school board charter, which limit people's participation in our school governing to body-only registered voters. I strongly believe that all parents, regardless if they are registered to vote or not, should be able to actively be involved in the school system in which their children attend. The Philadelphia's immigrant population is close to 15%. This means that a substantial portion of parents in our city are essentially barred from becoming members of public school board because we are not registered to vote. Whether parents are permanent resident, undocumented, or other ways ineligible to become registered voters, should we have no bearing in their ability to have their voice heard when it comes to their children's education. Many citizens are not registered voters either, but we are all residents of this city we call home. I believe that it isn't just to have a such requirement to have your voice heard, and it goes against the values of democracy that this country was founded in our city many years ago. We cannot truly claim we are moving towards a locally controlled school board when we are willingly silencing the voice of many in our city. By continuing forward with this arbitrary voting registration requirement, you are essentially telling me and others like me that even though I have called in the city of Philadelphia for over 20 years home and I have no voice. Even though I am a member of Philadelphia Public School community, I have no voice. Even though my children have educated from attending Philadelphia Public School, I have no voice. It's time we change the allowed democracy to be in full effect. Philadelphia has been on the vanguard of many issues, and we have the opportunity to once again show the rest of the country what true progress is like. I strongly encourage the City Council to vote to change the requirement of being a registered voter, though that being a resident of Philadelphia in order to be a part of our public school board. A community-controlled school board means that any members of Philadelphia's community should be able to participate in the decision-making bodies that affect their daily lives. I urge to vote to include all voices and allow many of us who have children in our school to also have our voice heard regarding our children's education. Thank you.
Thank you. Who'd like to go next? Okay.
Good morning, everybody. My name is Olivia Vasquez. I'm the community organizer for Juntos, and I am here to read the testimony of one of our youth leaders. Good morning, everybody. My name is Edgar Villegas. I am 15 years old and I am a youth leader from an immigrant rights organization, Juntos. I am also a freshman at the Creative Performing Arts High School here in Philadelphia. I want to start by saying that I would like to personally attend the City Council meeting regarding the future of my school board, but unfortunately, I was unable to attend because it was scheduled during school hours. Time and time again, we are told as young people that we should be active and involved in our school. The switch from state-appointed SRC to a local community control board is one of the best opportunities I can think of to allow young people to get involved in their schools. Unfortunately, before a new local control school board can even be established, myself and members of my family are having our voices silenced when it comes to making decisions over my education. One of the requirements to be a member of the public school board is that you must be a registered voter. This arbitrary requirement is essentially silencing the voices of those who are most affected by any decision this government body may take, the students. In order to truly have a local community control over school boards, we must ensure that any and all members of the Philadelphia's communities are able to be active voting members of it, regardless if they are registered to vote or not. My family is also known as a mixed status. This means that some members in my family are documented and some are not. It is important for me to mention this as well because when looking at the current school board charter, members of my family will also be barred from having a voice in the future of my education. I find this to be completely unjust and undemocratic. If we move forward with the current charter, we are going against the very idea of community control. I strongly encourage members of the council to vote and change the requirements to be on a school board from being registered voter to being a resident of Philadelphia. Vote against the silencing of young people's voices like myself when it comes to being a voting member of our public school board. Thank you.
Thank you. Please.
Hi, my name is Kendra Brooks, and I'm a parent. I'm also a part of Parents United for Public Education and our City, Our Schools Coalition. I didn't provide a written testimony because usually once I get here, it's what I wrote completely changes. But one thing I want to do is recognize and kind of mimic the voice of so many parents that have spoken before me, public, charter, immigrant, and also the youth. I think in moving forward, as we celebrate the abolishment of the SRC, I think moving forward, I want to ensure that our new school board kind of eliminates this divisiveness or the feeling that parents need. Parents feel that they need to fight just to keep a school open, to be sure of stability in their children's education, and that their voices of heard. I keep hearing voices being heard. But at this point, and our current system, the way it's set up, we needed our voices not only to be heard, but our actions to be recognized. And that when parents stand together and fight for what's right for their children, what's right for our current school board, around curriculum, about safe buildings, about building conditions, about funding, about getting money from PPA, or wherever it's coming from, that there's serious action taken on the stance that all parents take, regardless of public, charter, or immigrant parents. I also want to make sure that as part of this charter change, that a seriously consideration is being made for children. I brought my daughter out today, but she didn't want to stand up here with me. But I brought her out just so she can see the process and the procedures that's being in place. And I feel like this is a very detrimental education process for her moving into high school. And I think that recognizing that the requirement, I know it's a state requirement of being 18, but all of my children graduated already from high school by the time they were 18. So I think some serious consideration needs to be made when we're putting age limits on children's intelligence and knowledge. Because my daughter just sat here with me and had so many serious questions about what was going on here, like what's the process, understanding, procedures. So I think we really need to take strong consideration in youth voice in moving forward with the charter.
I understand
Thank
that.
you.
Just so you know, that's state, though. That would have to be.
Yeah, I know.
Okay, all right.
Read all of the charter stuff
Okay.
ahead of time.
All right, thank you.
Thank you.
No other questions, comments? Thank you very much. Thank you. Ms. Marconi, our next group, please.
Antoine Little, Nikki Bagby, and Lisa Haber.
Who we have here? Yeah. We're trying. Okay, let's see, who we have here. Sir, you are?
Antoine Little.
Antoine, okay.
I think so.
All right, I heard two other names mentioned, Nikki Bagby. I see Lisa here, okay. Nikki Bagby is not here? No, okay. You want to call another name, Ms. Marconi, please? Okay.
Andrea Mosel and Reverend Holston.
All right, why don't you all come up too, okay? Yeah, I think there's a few that signed up after this list. I think there's a few. Okay, Mr. Little, why don't you go first? Your name was called first. Why don't you go first?
Okay.
Please identify yourself and proceed.
Sure. Good morning. My name is Antoine Little. I'm on the 215 People's Alliance Steering Committee as well as the chair of the Our City, Our Schools Coalition. But the most important title that I hold is parent. And that's a parent of 6 public school students, 2 whom have graduated from high school already, and I have 1 who graduates high school this year, and I have 3 in elementary school right now. So when we talk about parent engagement, when we talk about having parents on this board, it's very important that we do have parents on this board. And I'm going to explain to you why. You know, when we begin to talk about parental engagement, for 16 years, there was no parental engagement with the current SRC. Parents they didn't have an input on how things should go. And we're the primary stakeholders when it comes to our children's education. When we talk about parental engagement, we talk about parents that are actively involved in these schools. So I look at myself, having 6 children, some have graduated, some still in. And, you know, you go to every meeting, you are actively involved in the schools, and you're on your children's back about their education. And then when you don't have a voice to actually say how you feel about how certain things are going, that becomes discouraging. When you begin to talk about how the direction of which our children's education should go, and the lack of counselors and the lack of nurses, and again, an example, at my children's elementary school, they went without a nurse for a very extended period of time. And all 3 of my younger children suffer from asthma very bad, and they have to be treated for this. So when you begin to talk about parental engagement, these are just a small fraction of the things that are important, not just to myself, but to other parents that are actively involved in these schools. So when we talk about the school board and what we need as a people school board, we're talking about it should be made up of parents, students, and educators, pretty much which are our true stakeholders in the school system. The end of conflict interest, the conflict of interest, no more profit off of our children, because our children's education has been up for sale for the last 16 years, which is deplorable. We believe students should have voting powers. All parents, regardless of documentation or voter registration status, should be eligible for the board, because if they have children that are in these schools, they are stakeholders. I speak about myself a lot because when I'm dealing with this, because, seeing the difference in school districts, and I use this example anytime I speak. I have one child she lives up in Warminster with her mother, and she attends the Centennial District. So this is where parental involvement comes in as well. The very first time I went to back to school night up in the Centennial District, it was like night and day compared to the Philadelphia District. And when I say night and day, I walked in, and when I walked into this high school, they had a state-of-the-art auditorium. They had a supermarket in the school teaching good, healthy eating. They had a credit union in the school teaching the students about financial responsibility. They had a library that was state-of-the-art. It reminded you of the library on Vine Street. And then going to the classrooms, every classroom had whiteboards, had everything that they needed to educate our children. So again, the question that I ask is, what's the difference between a student that attends a suburban district as opposed to a student that attends a Philadelphia public district? So when we talk about parental involvement, these are the things that the people that sit behind certain desks that make decisions don't see. But as parents, when we're at these schools every single day, these are the things that we see. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Lowe. Appreciate it. Who'd like to go next? Reverend Holson?
And my name is Reverend Gregory Holston. I'm the Executive Director of Power. Power is 65 congregations in the city of Philadelphia and beyond, representing about 40,000 congregants, building and trying to build communities of opportunity to work for all. I'm speaking here for us also Andre Mazel, who is the co-chair of our education team, who had to leave. But I want to say things that we definitely support all of what has already been said, but we have made a decision in regards to this piece of legislation. Our education team made up of principals, of teachers, former teachers, retired teachers in the city of Philadelphia. Our team, along with our clergy leadership, have looked at this piece of legislation and have taken the position that this piece of legislation must effectively lead to an elected school board if we're ever going to be able to have the quality education we need. I don't stand here by myself in saying that, but I stand here with all the power backing that position. Because I recognize, as a former teacher myself for 7 years in the school district, and my wife's a teacher for now some 27 years in the school district, teaches at Central High School. My recognition as someone who's lived in this area, now I'm 55 years old, the simple right to be able to vote for your school board, a right that is the case in every other school district in the state of Pennsylvania. The simple right that Philadelphians do not have that right to do that is not just wrong, it's morally wrong. We can do better. No one wants to move from the SRC to a concentrated board where it's controlled by just the mayor and the council. We want to see the opportunity to have democracy in action. We want to see every 2 years school board members being elected and having to stand before the city of Philadelphia and account for their actions. We want to see a school board elected every 2 years or school board members elected every 2 years where they're standing and having to give an account for every decision they made. What is their education philosophy? How are they changing and transforming our schools to make it better? Anyone who believes that just by ending the SRC, this means real change is going to happen is living in a fantasy world. Because the school board wasn't good before the SRC. The schools were not good before the SRC. The schools were in definite danger and trouble before the SRC. So to make the SRC seem like a devil when the problem is that democracy is the problem in this city, we don't have a democratic way of holding people who are accountable to the education of our children. We don't have a democratic way of handling and holding them accountable for their actions. And so I ask you council people here, I ask you to put in this legislation language that puts the question before the people, that dares to ask the city of Philadelphia, all right, what do you want? Do you want a board that's picked by the mayor and picked by council approval? Or do you want to elect this board yourself? I challenge you.
I challenge you to put in the language of this charter change, language that would allow the city voters to make the choice. If you think you have the right position in handling this, if you think that this is definitely the right thing to do, then take it before the voters and make your arguments before the voters. Don't hide just in this council, but go out before all the people and ask them what they really want. This is the time for the change that we need. We cannot have our schools be in this condition any longer. Thank you.
Okay, Ms. Haver, please. Please identify yourself.
Yeah, good morning. My name is Lisa Haver, and before I begin, I just want to point out the Centennial School District has an elected school board, and perhaps that has something to do with why Centennial School District has so much more than we do. Good morning. My name is Lisa. Good afternoon. My name is Lisa Haver. I'm a retired Philadelphia teacher. I've taught in Germantown, Feltonville, Frankfurt. My children graduated from Philadelphia Public Schools. I'm a member and co-founder of the Alliance for Philadelphia Public Schools. We are a grassroots organization of educators, parents, and community members. We believe that public schools, truly public schools, are the foundation of a democratic society. APS members have attended and testified at and reported on SRC meetings for the last 5 years. We've had our ears and our eyes on the SRC, and we have watched as they have furthered a privatization agenda that has devastated our public school system. There was a ridiculous comment made in an op-ed recently that said that governance of the school district wasn't important, that getting funding and improving conditions for students, that's what's really important, as if those two things could be separate. We as Philadelphians have to begin a period of recovery from the devastating decisions made by an unelected and unaccountable SRC imposed on us by Harrisburg. And for that, we need a school board whose members will advocate for fair funding, for fair employment policies, for spending the precious district dollars that we have on the best interest of the students, not the interest of the vendors. And one of the big failings of the SRC was they didn't really mobilize people, even people who sat on the other side of the table, like me, the members of APS, and we said, you get the bus, we'll be on your bus. We may be on this side of the table now. They really dropped the ball when it came to publicly advocating for what our kids need. And this is really important because the voices of the parents, students, and teachers have been shut out for the past 16 years. We've had the voices of rich and powerful people who don't live here, like the Gates and the Waltons, and the voices of the rich people who live in the suburbs, serve on the board of the Philadelphia School Partnership, or manage the Susquehanna Group. Those people have had a voice. We haven't heard them because they've been in meetings that the public has not been allowed to come to. But they push an agenda of choice while shutting down neighborhood schools, an agenda of choice while diverting public dollars to non-public schools. And our children have felt the impact of those decisions we had no part in making. When we end the SRC, we're going to be ending one of the biggest pay-to-play systems we have seen in this city. We can't maintain this status quo of outside hedge fund managers and edu vendors making decisions in rooms that we're not invited to about the city's public schools. I attended a meeting 2 weeks ago organized by Councilwoman Bass, where one parent said, he wants people on the board who have skin in the game. So who is that? Do you have to be a parent? I would say no, you do not have to be a parent. Do you have to be an education expert? No, you do not. But you have to believe in public education. You have to believe that neighborhoods need schools, and when that neighborhood school closes down, it affects not just the students and the parents, but everybody in that community. I want people on the board who are going to just stop the unquestioning expansion of inadequate charter schools and fail to shut down the failing charter schools that the SRC is continuing to fund. I want people on the school board who will go to Harrisburg, who will fight for the resources our kids need. We have to have an inclusive school board, a people's school board, but what we don't need on a school board is people who do not believe in public education. Thank you.
Lisa, Ms. Haber, I just wanted to thank you and Reverend Holston and the previous panel. I didn't want to interrupt everybody because I know people need to have their schedules, but I just wanted to thank you for the tremendous advocacy. It's been 17 years. We've done it together each step of the way.
At the first meeting.
Yes, at the very first meeting. And I'm incredibly grateful to parents like Kendra Brooks and to Anna Perng and to so many other people who have stuck with a complicated, difficult, dysfunctional public school system and are trying to fix it. And we want to make sure that you're being heard, so thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you
Thank
both.
you, Councilman Greenlee.
Thank you. I think we just have 4 more people that had scheduled, so we're going to call all 4 up at the same time. Ms. Marconi, please.
Sarah Ament, Sylvia Sims, Molly Michael, and Gail Clouden.
Okay. Please sit. All right, I heard 4 names called, and I've seen 3 people walk up. Is there anybody else? Your name was called? Yeah, come on up. Come on up, sit in the chair right behind, and so we can keep moving. Anybody other than these 4 want to testify? Okay, good. This will be our final panel, please. Whoever would like to go first.
Good afternoon. My name is Sarah
A
Arment.
little closer microphone because they're not very
Can you hear me now?
Yeah,
Okay.
that's better.
Good afternoon. My name is Sarah Arment. I'm a member of Reclaim Philadelphia, a social work student at Temple, and a student facilitator at the Power Internship, a social justice education program for high school students organized by the University Community Collaborative. Last month, the School Reform Commission voted to abolish itself and return control of our school district to a local school board. This incredible victory is just the first step in creating a truly accountable local school governance in Philadelphia. A local school board alone will not secure the level of integrity to students, families, educators, and community members that we need to see in order for our schools to prosper. That is why we are advocating for a people's school board. A people's school board will have meaningful representation of those who are most directly impacted by our schools: students, parents, educators, and community leaders. These are the people who are inside of and most affected by our schools every day. Who better knows than they do what our schools need? We urge the committee before us to ensure that the 3 criteria are met for all mayoral appointments to the school board. A people's school board will have no conflicts of interest. Profit-seeking must not take precedence over the needs of students, families, and educators in our district. No member of the board should be receiving monetary gains through decisions the school board makes. Lastly, we need a school board that will fight for fair funding of our schools. Corporations need to pay their fair share so our schools can get the resources they deserve. I am also asking you today, with the others here, to take action when changing the amendments to the current Philadelphia Home Rule Charter to expand the language around who is eligible to be on the board, as well as the voting power of students on the board. According to the current Home Rule Charter, both immigrants, parents, and students cannot vote on the school board. If these 2 groups are left out, our school board won't have representation from some of the most vital community members that it is meant to serve. Students are in our schools every day, and they are most directly impacted by any changes in the district. They deserve to have a voice in the decision-making process, and when they do, it makes our schools better. We already have evidence of this with the district's recent adoption of protections for transgender and gender nonconforming students. Philadelphia youth from the Addith Youth Center actually helped draft this policy as well as provide trainings for educators. This policy is so comprehensive precisely because the youth who are most affected by it were part of the process. This is why the student member of the school board needs to have a vote that actually counts. The students I work with are intelligent and capable and have a deep understanding of the systems that impact their lives, especially the school system. They are aware of the problems our schools face, and they have ideas about how to make them better. In states with districts that grant voting power to student members of the school board, not only do those districts benefit, but those students gain valuable skills and experience by being empowered to have a real impact on the board. Immigrants, too, must be able to hold positions on our school board. Right now, the Home Rule Charter states that members of the school board must be registered voters. Many parents of students don't have access to voter registration, so we must ensure that they are still eligible to have a seat on the school board. Our district is currently failing immigrant students and families, especially those who are non-English speakers. These parents know from experience what our schools should be doing to provide an equitable education for immigrant students, better than even experts. We need to ensure that immigrants are able to be members of the school board. I'm urging you to consider making these additional changes to the Home Rule Charter so that we may have a truly representational school board. Expand the language around eligibility so that immigrants can hold seats on the board and give student members of the board real voting power. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Sims?
Good afternoon, members of City Council Law and Government Committee. My name is Sylvia P. Sims, and I am the Executive Director of Educational Opportunities for Families and a former member of the School Reform Commission. I wanted to take this opportunity to come before you as you discuss an amendment to the city's charter to allow for the selection and confirmation of a new school board. To impress upon you the gravity in the task before you and the mayor. As a lifelong resident of North Philadelphia, I have seen firsthand the effects that low-performing schools can have on a community. I have experienced the feeling of hopelessness that a parent and family member feel sending their children to a school which they have been failing to provide a quality education. And I have also felt the anger of a parent who trusted a school system and its leaders when it asks us to be patient and give the district time to make changes from within. Well, I can tell you, parents in the city are done with waiting. We spend close to $3 billion every year to educate the students in this city, and yet we have 29 schools that only receive a single-digit score on the district's most recent school progress report. These single-digit schools are homes of over 17,000 students who are being failed by this city. But there is hope for our children, and it comes from when families are empowered to access to high-quality school choice options. In the city of Philadelphia, the charter schools are outperforming the districts in all the academic indicators I just mentioned. Let me make one thing very clear. The new school board has a responsibility to ensure that every public school students have access to high-quality education. This means not only must these individuals work to provide the district-run schools, but they must be also respect to preserve the family rights to choose the best school for their children. As Mayor Kenney said, I am responsible for every one of those children, no matter what type of school they attend, and I will be judged by the voters on the number of high-performing schools in every neighborhood, not whether those schools are district or public schools. Council members, there are nearly 65,000 Philadelphia children attending charter schools in this city. That is 40% of the total student population. I ask you to ensure the selection and confirmation process of this new school board be unbiased, and that the board members you confirm are there to represent the needs of every Philadelphia student and not there to push their own political agenda. On behalf of the 8,000-plus families I am privileged to call my allies in the fight for a better Philadelphia school, I ask you to take the responsibility of confirming the mayor's appointed school board very seriously, because we are watching and holding you and the mayor accountable for the outcomes. Thank you.
Thank you. If I could add, Ms. Alman, if you could step to the back so the next witness could come up too, and then, please, you go ahead. Come on up, ma'am, to that seat.
Good morning. My name is Molly Michael. I'm a parent of two daughters who attend our neighborhood school, Southwark in South Philadelphia, and I'm also a leader of the school's school advisory council. We've been a part of our school community for nearly 4 years now, and we've been very happy with the education our daughters are receiving. In recent years, we've seen reading scores in our largely immigrant school skyrocket, in large part due to the investment in a literacy coach and new curriculum and teaching methodology. This year, we're focusing on improving our math test scores as well.
The investment in our school has been so successful that Southwark, which was previously under-enrolled, is now bursting at the seams, growing from just over 500 students when my daughter enrolled in 2014 to more than 800 students enrolled this fall. We also serve, a majority of our students are from the catchment that the school is in. And so we're at capacity at the school for the first time in more than a decade. On all fronts, we're a high-functioning neighborhood school with a bright future, even though we continue to operate on an inadequate budget, including inequitable allocation of our Title I funding that doesn't appropriately account for our immigrant students living in poverty. Having said all of that, I was thrilled with the vote at last month's School Reform Commission for the board to dissolve itself. There has never been a better time to restore local control with a school board appointed by the mayor and approved by City Council. With centralized accountability and transparency and a mayoral accountability, I do believe that is the best course forward for our school. One of the problems we consistently face with this SRC is a lack of accountability, and I do believe that local control can change that. We can hold the mayor accountable for the district's stability and success, and as a Philadelphian and a public school parent, I am looking forward to a new era of transparency, accountability, and success for our teachers, students, and administrators citywide. And I will say that I know that local control is not a panacea, and we have to continue to be in Harrisburg every single day, fighting the fight for funding and a fair funding formula statewide and for our city. Thank you.
Yeah, Harrisburg's not off the hook. You're absolutely right. Please, identify yourself and proceed.
I am Mama Gail. My legal name is Gail Clouden, C-L-O-U-D-E-N. I am privileged to sit here this morning, or now afternoon, because I've been traveling extensively, and I just returned from Korea and China. And I had to go out in the hall to cry, to be honest with you, that in 2018, we'd be sitting here asking for a school board. I've sat for many years at 62, I sat in front of Dr. Clayton month after month after month. The only time I'm not at the SRC is when I'm on the road. I'm in another country or another state. And my mission is peace and love. That's my mission. And with the failure to our children, the failure to our people, I sit and I continue to say it's unacceptable. And to sit here today and think about all that I've heard, because I haven't had time to read a whole lot of anything, because I've been with leaders from all over the world. And when I think of the failure that I've seen in the past 6 years, that people don't want to talk about while you're talking about a school board, what about the failing superintendent? And I said, for anybody that knows me, I've been ringing the bell saying your time is up, Dr. Height. It was easy for people to come together and say Dr. Arlene K. Ackerman had to go, but no one wants to talk about Dr. William Height Jr. going. You talk about a school board, but what about the person that's at the helm? We've watched children fail. I've watched people's children taken away from them as a result of reporting bullying. I've seen so many things that are inhumane happen in Philadelphia. This is the beginning of everything. And it hurts so much because I watch procurement. I help to get minority people businesses, get them business with the district. And I think back to Dr. Clayton sitting there saying, Dr. Clayton sitting with the school board at the time, and they're asking, what about contracts? How do people get to know how to apply for a contract? Here we are today, while we're talking about the school board, finances is very important. I'm telling you. When I was on the radio and I thought I heard Councilwoman Sanchez on the line, and she said there were a few hundred properties getting ready to go on the auction block. I thought I heard her say that, and they could be bidded on all over the world
and the people only owed $1,000. I was waiting to go on the line, and so am I hearing what I think I'm hearing? So while you're talking about a school board, and while you're talking about all the other stuff, where's the money that's being supposed to be raised for the school board, for the school district of Philadelphia, excuse me? I didn't come here to speak. But there are some times where you can't sit and not speak. There's so many levels of failure here. And when people go out to other cities, other states, they're taking this panacea of what's happening here, pretending, lying to the public all over the world about what's happening here, and it's time to stop. I don't know how the school board is going to be set up, but what I'm saying to you is you're the people that we elected to sit in for us. Do what is the right thing to do just because it's the right thing to do. You know that you can tell when you go out to the store, out to a restaurant to eat, the level of what? The level of what am I trying to say? How people wait on you, how they treat you. You can see the failure that's happening in our city repeatedly, and it has to stop. I don't have a lot to say to you because I sat and I watched you earlier. I don't know how much of what people are saying to you really matters, but I'm saying to you, do what is right because it's the right thing to do. We elected you to sit for us and speak for us. I was told that there's going to be 3 people that's going to be on the school board, that the mayor, 2 people or something that's going to stay on the school board that was on the school board. I don't know. I'm hearing all kinds of things. Put out there what the truth is so that people know what the truth is. I know for sure the pastor was correct when he talked about having the people decide. And I was sitting there thinking, someone did a talk to us several years ago, and he talked about the fact that it was an elected school board in Philadelphia probably 1 year, and I think he said it was in the 1800s. Go back to that. Look at what was happening then. Go back to that. Go back to history and what has worked here and other places, and use it. And stop putting energy into a broken system. Change it. Y'all can do that. You're the people that we elected.
Okay, thank you, ma'am. Thank you.
No, thank you.
Okay.
Thank you.
All right, if there's no other testimony, that completes our public hearing on this matter. We will now go into a public meeting, and just so we have everything together here, we're going to take about a 15-minute break before we commence with our public meeting. Thank you very much. Finally, this is the Law and Government Committee, the public meeting, and the chair recognizes Councilman Green for the amendment dealing with eligibility for board membership, Section 12-202.
Thank you, Chairman Greenlee. The following amendment has been properly circulated to all members of this committee. I move that the amendment to Resolution number 170967 pertaining to Section 12-202 regarding eligibility for board members be approved.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded. All in favor of that motion?
Aye.
Opposed? Record will reflect Councilman O'Neill voted no, but the amendment passes. Now, Chair recognizes Councilman Green for the motion on the other amendments in Resolution 170967.
Thank you, Chairman Greenlee. I move that amendments to Resolution 170967, the other amendments to that resolution be approved by this committee.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded. Excuse me, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Hearing none, the amendments as moved by Councilman Green are approved. Chair now recognizes Councilman Green for a motion on the resolution as amended. Yes.
Thank you, Councilman Greenlee. I move that resolution number 170967 as amended be voted out of this committee with a favorable recommendation and that the rules...
We don't need a rule suspension for a resolution.
The favorable recommendation be let me just restate that. I move that resolution number 170967 as amended be voted out as committee with a favorable recommendation.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Hearing none. Resolution number 170967 as amended is reported out as committee with favorable recommendation. Chair now recognizes Councilman Green regarding Bill number 170954.
Thank you, Chairman Greenlee. I move that bill number 170954 be voted out of this committee with a favorable recommendation with suspension of the rules so this bill can be heard on our next meeting of council.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Hearing none. Bill number 170954 is reported as committee with favorable recommendation with a rule suspension allowed for for reading at our next session of council. That completes our law and government hearing and meeting for today. Thank you all very much. Happy holidays and all that good stuff.